Me start the recording or you?
It's recording. But I can cut it. I'm going to cut it.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Hello, and welcome to Trinity's third annual Senior Portfolio Art Show, the online / COVID-19 global pandemic edition. Really excited to show you everything we've created, and we really hope you enjoy it. So what we plan to do for this particular video is to go through like our capstone story and just a few different pages of what we've created before we set you off to explore everything we made the last couple of months and weeks. So we're gonna start with our artist statements. We're not going to read them, but these are just like why we create statements that we sort of made in the beginning of the year. We made them in the beginning of the year specifically for the fall fanfare of music because they asked for artist statements because we were showing art during that performing arts event. And I thought it was a good experience because not only were our artist statements put in the program to go along with the program of the performing arts, but it also gave us our first glimpse of what it means to like show off artwork. And when the before like people walked in to see the performing arts, they would come in through the gym to see that our art was displayed. So that was an interesting experience. How was that for you, Addie?
well, I think just kind of what you were saying, but especially writing the artist statement for me kind of made me think like why we were making the art that we were making and kind of like deeper meanings behind it that we could like incorporate into our art, and especially just how it like related to us. So
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to actually go now to our capstone page. So we talk about our capstone a little bit. So for our capstone, originally we had planned to have the third annual Trinity Senior Art Show, and along with that, curate Arts Festival. But however, with everything closed, we had to start new and decide on an art gallery, an online version. So we're gonna just go through like the process a little bit.
So just at the very beginning of our capstone project, we just kind of had a lot of meetings with Mr. Clark and Mr. Gould just to figure out what we were even going to be doing. And we decided on the Arts Fest, which would give us like kind of our first taste of curation, and then we would go off and do the senior art show more independently. So these are just some notes we took because that's what we were doing for most of the time.
Just a lot of note taking before we actually did anything. So after we had finally like made a plan, one of the most important things to do probably the most important thing to do when curating an art show or having an art show is having a location for the art show. So I had last year when I was a junior, I had almost shadowed Hope Muter, who did the senior art show, for her capstone, and like one of the advice that she gave me was to find your location early. And we didn't really understand that until it actually happened to us. So when we started, we found our location. We emailed 5 different locations in October, and we wanted to find the one that was best fit in the area that matched the tone of our senior class. And fortunately, we heard from all of them, but the Power Plant Gallery was the one that stuck out to us the most. And Caroline Barnett, a senior 2 years ago, who actually put on the first senior art show, used the space as well, and we'd heard some good things from her. And we were able to speak with, I don't remember her exact title, but Caitlin, who worked at the Power Plant Gallery. She helped us along the way, and we had a lot of emails between her and for securing the space and everything. And that was their original goal, was to have the art gallery there. So.
And then kind of a step that we like took throughout the whole process of this, especially like after we found that we had an actual space to work with, was researching different like gallery wall styles. So like if we wanted them to be crowded or more spread out or thematic or like organized by colors, just so we could get just some ideas to brainstorm with. So we spent a lot of time doing that and taking notes.
Yeah. So before we actually really got into the curation of the senior art show, we had put that on hold to work on Arts Fest. So Arts Festival is another type show that Trinity has where they have performing arts as well as visual arts. And we had the permission of Mr. Clark and Mr. Gould and a few other people, Miss Ray, to curate how we wanted to see the visual art be done. And we'd taken more notes, we had gone through many more meetings, and we decided that we wanted Arts Festival to be mainly focused on the underclassmen because they don't really get a lot of opportunities to show off their visual art. So we had many different cornerstone announcements. We had posters made. We had volunteers who came from different walks of life that we didn't even notice or know that they wanted to like participate in. So that was a very fun experience. We were definitely at Trinity from I think 8 a.m. to around 9 or 10 even at night, like setting up art and taking down art. And it was a really fun experience to go through. We learned a lot just about like organizing pieces and collecting pieces from everyone. Definitely when we had first like had the week of collecting artwork from the underclassmen, we didn't realize how many pieces we had and how many people were actually excited to participate, and just putting everything in perspective of just like how much art has an impact on just the Trinity community was very fun. And like the night of Arts Festival, we even had some live art being done from our portfolio class, which was also a good opportunity to see all of us come together and just not only highlight the underclassmen, but also have our seniors do something to show off how visual art takes over just from like being the oldest out of all of the students. And these are actually some pictures of us during Arts Festival performing live art.
So we had another little section on this page called creation, which is kind of vague, but just throughout the first half of our project, it was more like boring kind of stuff like researching and planning and communicating, which was fine, but I think for both of us, we kind of realized that we were missing a more creative aspect that kind of like drew us into this whole capstone. So we decided that we would each like start creating artworks of our own for our capstone that would eventually like be in the show, just to add something a little like creative.
Yeah, just like adding more to our portfolios along with curating. So after Arts Festival had ended, we had to take a walkthrough of the space for our senior art show because that was now the priority. So we one afternoon took some time to visit the power plant gallery and have a walkthrough with Caitlin, who was emailing us earlier about it. So we were able to see the layout and everything, and she gave us blueprints of how like the space looked, and just also gave us a lot of different like the regulations we had to follow and things to consider when creating an art show. And it definitely put more in perspective of how important it is to keep in consideration of things that you might not necessarily think about, like safety, which things you can't put artwork in front of, like doors and windows, and which things you can hang light fixtures from, stuff like that. And you'd always think about like just the artwork itself and just like how you want to arrange it, but you never really think about how it's all going to get done. And just like going in the space and talking with her, because she's seen probably thousands of art shows, and just going through and understanding what it takes to actually put things together was very helpful. So we have a few pictures that we took while we were there, and yeah.
And so just the last thing we added to this page was starting from scratch, which obviously you're going to see kind of the culmination of this part in our website and how it all came together. So as spring break was ending, Caitlin emailed us and told us the Power Plant Gallery was going to be closed through the 21st of April, which was the day of the show. And eventually we would realize like the rest of school was going to be canceled, so there wasn't really the option of doing something small at Trinity. And so we kind of felt hopeless at first, but then we Zoomed with Mr. Clark and Mr. Gould a few times, and we kind of got the idea of making a website. And luckily we have both worked with Weebly before to create our own personal portfolio websites. So yeah, just it kind of all came together, and this is what we created.
Yeah. So in a normal art show, definitely you would hear artists talk about their work, but since we can't do that in person, just the two of us are going to talk a little bit about a few of our pieces. So I'm going to go first. I think I'm going to talk about or start with this one. So this one is called In Medio Res. It's Latin for in the midst of things. So I think when I created this, it was actually like the first piece I created for my portfolio. I have one that's a little bit older, but this was the one I first created specifically for my portfolio. It's based off of a poem called In Medio Res by Malcolm Guite. That was the prompt that Mr. Clark had given to us at the time, just creating a piece from a poem we liked, and he gave us like a bunch of different poems, and that's the one that stuck out to me. The poem talks about being in the middle of everything and like finding who you are, and maybe not necessarily knowing where you're supposed to go, and just like having and feeling like lostness. But then it shifts in talking about like knowing exactly what you want and looking for the true like meaning while you're in the middle of everything. And when I like discussed it with Mr. Clark, he meant like the author or the poet had meant that like Jesus was like there in the middle of everything when everything was like wrong. And I thought that was really interesting. So I wanted to make a piece on how I thought of that poem. So this piece is created with colored pencils on just normal drawing paper. It's like darker drawing paper. Yeah. It was a very fun experience to make. I had never used colored pencil before, and I did my artwork. I use usually wet media, and this is dry media. It was very fun to create. I think it just had me thinking all the time about what it was supposed to mean and stuff like that. And I spent a lot of time on it. And something that was interesting to me was that Mr. Clark had pointed out that I like used the colored pencils differently than I had ever seen. Just like almost like how people use like oil pastel and chalk pastel. Like my style had mirrored that, and I thought that was interesting because I just used it how I sought to use it. So that's this piece. I'm going to talk about this one. This one's called Ferrous Sulfate. It was made with a few different pens on just normal drawing paper again. So I think at the time I think this was my last piece for portfolio one. It's called Ferrous Sulfate. That's a very interesting name, but actually there's a story behind it. So it's me on my couch, probably a late night or something. But I think during the time, I think the the theme of the piece, or the prompt that Mr. Clark had given us, was like being disoriented, and I got being disoriented as a reflection of me, how I feel disoriented when I stand up sometimes because of iron deficiency anemia. And at the time when I created it, or I think it was months before I created it, I had really, really like low iron for like a long time. And when I'm like was not doing homework or doing anything else, I would just lay on my couch, and like usually I would like go to bed on my couch and just like not leave my couch for like a very long time. So I wanted to name it ferrous sulfate because that was like the medicine I started taking, like that was stronger than like over-the-counter iron. That was the name of the medicine I was taking when I had like very, very low iron at that time. I think it was like January, or I don't even remember when. It was just for a couple of months. And I just wanted to depict how that like affected me and like being disoriented, but then also being calm and like having a safe space of the living room. And that's like what my living room looks like. So I wanted to show that too. I enjoyed making it because I think when I did eventually create it, I had just like was getting like better from being anemic, and I had to use like a bunch of different pens, and it was very fun to create different textures that I saw in my living room. So that's how that turned out. So I'm just gonna show two, and we're gonna go to Addie now, if I can find her name. So
okay, I can just start with my portrait, my self-portrait. Yeah,
beautiful.
Thank you. So I think this was my first artwork for Portfolio 2, and Mr. Clark had given us the 4 quartet poems or something that we had to read, and we chose one to make an artwork out of. And I chose Burnt Norton. I don't really remember how it relates to the poem, but I remember like the contrast of stuff maybe. So I kind of wanted to capture that in a self-portrait, also because I like doing portraits. So you can probably see it around the cheek and the nose, like a little bit of gray coming through, kind of like to represent exhaustion or just being really tired. And then on top of my cheeks and my nose is kind of a more like red tint. And just the contrast between, you know, like red in your face means excitement or embarrassment or just like a stronger emotion, and then the gray just being more dull. So I just wanted to show that. And then the other one I want to do, I think it's right under it, is a pen and ink one.
Amazing.
Thank you. And this one's called Disorienting. It was my final project for last year, Portfolio 1. The prompt was disorientation, and I just really wanted to use pen and ink. And so basically I made this when I was watching a TV show, and I just decided to draw whatever pops into my head, what I was thinking about the TV show or anything else. And then I just drew a bunch of lines to make it like weird to look at, like you don't know where to look. There's no specific point of that stands out more than the other ones, I guess. So I just put a lot of like detail into every part of the paint or drawing, I guess. And yeah, I feel like it's pretty disorienting. So yeah.
You have a lot of things going on in it, which I appreciate. So, and like for the your first time using pen and ink, it's really good. Thanks. You're welcome. So, now that we've talked about our paintings and we have gone over our capstone, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and say thank you for looking at our website and watching this video. If you made it to the end, you're a real one. Thank you for watching. We hope you take some time to explore what our peers have created as well as some of the little fun things we have on the website, including our young artist page, just some things we made when we were young, and just feel free to look at as much as you want. So
just hope you enjoy the website, and just appreciate the effort the other seniors have put into all their work.
Yeah, we couldn't have done any of it without them. So thank you, and